Welcome back to another exciting episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, the podcast mogul. And today we're joined by an inspiring figure in the world of podcasting and content creation, a true leader who has built a name that is synonymous with dedication, authenticity, and impactful storytelling. Our guest is the powerhouse behind the Erik Allen Show, a top 1.5 globally ranked podcast, and that captures the audiences with its real, unfiltered conversations. He isn't just a podcast host, he's the devoted family man, a follower of faith, and a skilled content creator who has made waves across major platforms, from being featured on the NASDAQ and Times Square to sharing his insights on over 200 podcasts, including Dropping Bombs with Brad Leah. Our guest has solidified his place as a sought-after podcast coach and content expert. So today, I am excited to have him on, the one, the only Erik Allen. Erik, thank you so much for being here, man.
Oh, Phil, such an honor to be on your show, dude. I'm excited to get into the conversation with you, man. You have an awesome show, and people need to be listening to the show for sure, man.
Well, they also have to be listening to you, but there's a lot more people since you're top 1.5. I'm on my way up. I'm at a 5% globally, which is still an impressive feat for any podcast to hit.
For sure.
So I'm going to jump straight into it. As a podcaster, how did you become an entrepreneur? Because podcasters aren't known for making money, if anybody knows the tales.
Yeah, I think podcasting is really just the door that opens, right? So podcasting brings relationships, partnerships, collaborations. You know, some of my best friends today are people that I've had on the podcast, or I was on their podcast, right? And so, you know, through podcasting, you can set up affiliate links, or you can get paid sponsors, or you can create communities where there's other folks that are joining that community that maybe other podcasters or whatever your niche is, right? And maybe it's a free community, and then you've got an upgrade to a larger, you know, monthly spend sort of community. But I think podcasting is all of that. But for me, it's a legacy. Like, I wish that I could go back 3 and 4 generations deep and hear my great grandfather's voice and hear his story from him. And I can't do that, but I can certainly do that for future generations down my tribe, right?
Oh, I love that. It is the legacy. I look at podcasting. Yeah, it can create wealth, but what it really creates is that legacy wealth that you're leaving a stamp. Like, I started this to learn for myself what an entrepreneur is, because who knows what an entrepreneur is, right? I thought it was your uncle getting the get rich quick schemes, totally. Or a brick and mortar type thing. Like, no, and the digital space created that world for me. So I'm learning from amazing people like yourself, but also it's now a legacy for my nephew. So he can listen to it and figure out, and my kids when they come down, and then 18 generations down, because who wouldn't love to have like the Rockefellers, what the first Rockefeller, setting up Standard Oil, who wouldn't love to hear his ideas, and learn from him. But yeah, I love that this is for your legacy. How long have you been podcasting for?
So I started podcasting in 2017. And I started with an MMA podcast called The Top Rated MMA. And I was just interviewing MMA fighters and asking them really, like, why the heck do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? and
pretty good question to ask.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was in a walk-in closet. I had a 100-foot extension that wrapped around the bed in the bedroom into the closet because there's no plug-ins, like bad lighting, didn't even look into the camera. Like, I was actually just uploading my video to YouTube and calling that my podcast. And I had literally released about 100 episodes, and someone said, well, how can I listen to it on Apple? And I was like, what the hell is that? I didn't even know what Apple Podcast was. I was just uploading to YouTube. I got a podcast, man. Like, I mean, I was interviewing major MMA guys. Some of them have become UFC champions, which is awesome. But 2017, I actually released 256 episodes of that first show. And in 2019, I started what is now the Erik Allen Show. So I ran both shows between 2019 and 2021. And my current show, episode 292, drops tomorrow. So yeah, I've done a little over 500 interviews since I started this thing.
Now, I want to go back to the top ranked MMA show, which I think is smart SEO, and because it's genius, because everybody's going to write the top MMA show, right?
Yeah.
Having that, stealing that was a genius move by you, Erik. Now with your new show, because I'm going to get into the podcasting nitty-gritty, because this is what I do. I love podcasting. Been doing it for a decade now. So I love talking to other podcasters who are successful. How important is the SEO in your podcast titles, because now you're doing it off your name. You're making
Yeah.
yourself the main brand here, which most people aren't searching Erik Allen if they don't know who you are.
Yep.
Right. And that's the number one problem with most podcasters. No one knows who they are, so they can't find us. So
Yeah.
how did you use SEO to grow to the top 1.5%? Because that's super impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, so the show that I have today, I used to have this really long beard, and it was called I when I started the show, it was called the Bearded Biz Show, and it was bearded then Biz. And I thought if I have a podcast named that, I'll never have to shave my beard. And I was about 65 episodes into that, and my wife the whole time's going, "Hey, maybe you should think about changing that name. I don't know, like the name." And then I went down to do Brad Lee's podcast, and I was sitting down with him. He's like, "Are you sure that's the name you want to call it?" And I was like, "Well, maybe I should change it." Right. So I changed it to the Erik Allen Show. And I think, like you said, not many people are probably searching for Erik Allen. But what I do put in the SEO is I speak to entrepreneurs, world changers, and success minded people. And so that's really like the tagline for my show. And I think it's super important to have the right SEO. And now I used to have no idea what I was doing when it came to SEO before AI. Like I was just trying to like wing it and see what would happen, right? Throw stuff at the wall and see if it stuck. And I do use AI a little bit on some of the keywords and things like that I should put into my keynote or my show notes and stuff now. And I think it's helped. But I think really the biggest thing that's helped my show grow is being on other shows as a guest and then being consistent. As you know, being in podcasts for a decade, which is massive, it's awesome. Like most people don't make it to episode 50. And I think for the last 5 years, 6 years since I really started this show, I've released a show every single Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific. And I will not stop. I take like Christmas off, maybe 2 weeks out of the year, right? But like for the most part, every Friday I'm doing that. And so I think that being consistent, having some SEO in there that's going to, draw some people to the show, that's what's real important. I think that's what's helped grow my show.
I love it. I want to go to the consistency, because that is a huge factor in the success that podcasting has as a podcaster. As we know, like the more episodes you have, the more people can listen to the back catalog and downloads grow and blah, blah, blah. How did you get over that hump? Because the whole thing of pod fade, right? Like you mentioned, most people don't make it to 50. I think the current stat is like less than 10% make it past, 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Because as a podcaster, how much work doing a podcast is, because this is the easy part. This is the fun part. This is what everybody thinks a podcast is, right?
Yeah.
But then there's the pre and the post production that no one thinks about. So how did you survive getting past, on 2 different podcasts past episode 50?
For me, I love this. Like I get fired up when I'm gonna talk to somebody new. Like I get so excited when I'm either a guest or talk to someone on my show. And so I think for me, it's about building relationships. It's about being that community. And I never wanted to let that stop. And so for me to be able to, I know that there's work that's going to go into it, but it's helped me to be fired up every time. I'm excited to get on a show every single time. There's never one time in the 7 years or 8 years that I've been doing this thing where I got on a show and I'm like, "Oh man, I got to do this stupid podcast today." No, I'm like fired up. I'm ready to go every single time because I love this stuff. I love being able to impact people. I love being able to connect with new people. And so I think that's what's helped me. But I also have this just massive vision of just hitting 1,000 episodes, right? Like on my podcast, I want to hit 1,000 episodes and not stop there. But that's like my next mile marker, right? Like I hit 500, but no, I want to hit 1,000, right? Like that's what drives me every single day is when it comes to podcasting, I want to talk to as many people as I can. And I want to connect with as many people as I can because that's only impacting those listeners that I don't even know about, right? I love podcasting because people could just like, they're like the sneaky people that are just listening to a one-on-one conversation, right? It's almost like this, creeper listening, like, but I'm listening to a podcast, right? But that's what it is. And I'm like, I want to impact that guy who I don't even know that's listening to the show.
I love that. I love how, because this is the most intimate form of communication, because it's me and you having this conversation. Yes, we have the idea for the audience, but really it's just us. We don't have the audience, so I don't know what my audience wants to hear from you. So I have to gauge that, and you have to gauge the response. But they're just there, just sitting outside, just outside our vision, listening in and being like, "Oh my God, what are they talking about? How did they do this?"
Yeah,
and it is a very, and plus we're right in their ears, and that's what's so intimate. How do you I want to know, what do you follow? Who do you follow in the podcasting space,
Mm.
specifically growing podcasts? I don't want to, not who you listen to on a hobby like a Joe Rogan or something, but
Yeah.
more in the podcast area, because the people listening here, what podcast do you listen to about growing podcasts or doing the podcast business?
Mm. Yeah. So, gosh, I think it's called Proud Mouth, is a podcast that I listen to. The host, his name is Matt, and he has this full service about podcasting and launching podcasts and things like that. And he's got a great platform over there, and he connects with a lot of, guest booking and things like that. My friend Kelly Cardenas and Joe Graham both have awesome shows as well. Like they do bring on guests that talk about podcasting at times, and so I listen to that show a lot. But when it comes to podcasting, Pat Flynn's another one that I like to listen to. Obviously, he's been around forever, but he has such great tips and knowledge around the podcasting world that those are the guys that I'm like, oh, if I want to learn something new, I want to go listen to those guys and see how that grows. And so those are probably the go-tos for me when I'm trying to learn something new on the podcast side of things.
I love that. Where do you see the podcasting space going from here? Now that we've had this double boom, like,
Yeah.
I came in before the 2017 bump, which Serial exploded us, which that's your class, if you would,
Yeah.
you say, since you started.
Totally.
Then we have the Joe Rogan class that exploded us in a million podcasts from 2020 to 2021. Where do you see us going from here? And what do you hope can happen?
I think that if you're a business or an entrepreneur or have a brand and you don't have a podcast, you're going to sink quickly. And I say that because this is the easiest way to communicate, to market your brand for absolutely $0. You can market and brand your company and build relationships and start to spread the news about your podcast for $0. But not only that, they get to hear, like you said, the intimate conversations that you're having. They get to hear your real personality. It's not like I'm at work and I have to follow the guidelines of like HR, right? Like, no, the podcasting world is the wild, wild west. We can talk about whatever the heck we want as of right now. But I think that, I think that podcasting is growing so much. Like even mainstream media is now talking about it. I mean, you look at, like, not to get political, but you saw like Trump getting on the podcast, right? That was a massive move for him. You saw Kamala, or however you say your name, like, get on the podcast, right? So everybody's kind of moving to the podcast world. And I just think that the more bigger names out there that start to kind of say, hey, I'm going on this podcast, or I'm going to talk to people like that, or Patrick David, right? Who's massive. Like, those type of shows are starting to really populate and normalize podcasting. But I think it's exciting. I don't think it's going to get boring. I think it's going to continue to grow. And I think we'll continue to see people utilizing it to grow their business, their brand, and market everything for them.
I love that. Yeah, I feel the same thing. The bigger the names come in, the wealth of new listeners come in, because I saw a stat just worldwide. We're at 500 million listeners worldwide for podcasting, which is huge. And you got developing markets as well, like India, Pakistan, China has this, Japan, they're starting, Europe is embracing it. So you have all these emerging markets where brands can easily access without dealing with the headaches of learning these other systems by just having a podcast, because Apple's over there, Spotify's over there, and then all the other smaller things just grab. And so you like you said, you don't know who's listening, because it's unknown, because no one can leave a comment on your podcast,
right?
They can leave a review, which is great, and you should be leaving reviews for both my show and the Erik Allen show, of course. 5 stars always on whichever platform you prefer.
Totally.
But it is the future, because if a brand's not on it, how am I going to hear about it? And there's the news. I think that more people trust an ad on a podcast than on mainstream media.
Totally.
The old school thing, because it is that intimacy. I get the trust. My listeners get to trust me, and they Phil's not going to steer us wrong, or Erik's not going to steer us wrong on your case. I'm curious, how do you go about monetizing your community, or your podcast at least?
Yeah. So really funny. I've actually monetized the majority of my sponsorships that have been on my podcast over the years. Have actually come through Fiverr, and Fiverr has been probably my top in like revenue stream, literally just from podcast sponsoring. I just put a Fiverr gig up like 4 years ago that said, hey, advertise your brand on my podcast. I get people all the time going through, I don't even know them, right? They'll just reach out to me and say, hey, cool, can I advertise in your podcast? Sure. As long as I align with the value, it's not something like crazy way off that I don't believe in, Oh yeah, I'll take your money. Sure. I'll pull it on there. Like it's just a easy way to generate the income that pays for the bills. Right. But like, Fiverr's a way that I've done it. I've also connected with local businesses where I live out in Idaho. So I've talked with local businesses. Sometimes I do trades. I had a lady for 3 years give my wife and I a massage every month, and I just threw her name up on our website. Like I probably didn't refer much business to her, unfortunately, but she loved to like have us come down and give us a massage each month. And my wife's like, "That's the first sponsorship you've gotten that actually helps me out too." You know, right? Like,
She's like, "That's my sponsor. You forget that. I'm getting 2 a day. You don't 2 a month. You don't get yours."
Right.
Oh
So,
my God.
I mean, and you can obviously do affiliate marketing. I've done some of that, but I also created courses. So I have a course that self-paced that people can go through. It's like how to start and launch and run your own podcast. And I teach everything that I went through to get to where I'm at today. And I'm actually re-recording that course right now. And I'm going to be doubling the bonuses and all that stuff. So the price will increase. So anybody who buys it now will get it at the discounted price. They'll get the updated version. So
I love the Fiverr idea. I've never thought of putting Fiverr sponsor. Oh, that is genius.
yeah, and they advertise for you. And so I
It's-
mean, I have gigs. I don't ever have to. I've never sponsored or advertised on Fiverr or paid for anything. Right? I don't pay for marketing. But Fiverr, over the last 5 years, I've generated over $11,000 from Fiverr in sponsorships, and it's opened up content creation packages where brands will send me their product. They want me to do a video, right? Like all because of Fiverr, and that's helped pay the bills of the podcast and helped me increase some of my sales and stuff. So man, Fiverr, like I only have 2 gigs on there, like podcast sponsorship, and let me do a video for you. That's it. Like, you know,
that is ridiculously genius and thinking outside the box, because everybody thinks the sponsorship, oh, I have to go to, I have to have 10,000 listeners or something like that before a brand comes here.
totally.
But if you just put a simple gig on Fiverr, well, I'm going to be putting a gigs on Fiverr now. Thank you for that. I'm definitely loving this episode, Erik, because you just blew my mind, and I never thought about that. Holy shit! Fucking different platforms. Like, oh my God. Anyways, we're gonna. When did you hire your first team, or do you have a team that handles most of the hard work for you as a podcaster?
I'm a me, myself, and I guy. I have done everything 100% myself since day one. Editing, marketing, website. I mean, I paid to have the website done about 5 years ago, but I do all the edits and things like that myself. So it's just me, myself, and I, man.
So I have to know, what tools do you use? What's your tool stack as a podcaster?
Yeah, great question. So I was using Riverside, which I love using Riverside for the recordings. My laptop's a little bit older, and they increased their tech specs, and so it wasn't working very well with my laptop. So unfortunately, right now I went back to Zoom while I'm getting a new laptop. So I'm using Zoom right now to record on the shows, but I use iMovie, which is free on my MacBook to edit the shows. I pay $10 a month for Adobe Photoshop to edit my photos, the episode images, and then I have a platform called Vizard, Vizard, and that costs about $180 a year. And I take the video from Zoom, I upload it, and Vizard gives me about 20 reels already cut with AI and fonts and all that stuff. I go in and make a few edits and pull that out, and it takes me about an hour to do it for the full editing, all of that stuff, and then I upload to the platform and call it good.
That is some amazing tools. I heard of like one of those, the whole out of all of them, apart from Zoom, which is like the old school recording platform,
Totally.
which I think nearly all podcasters start on when they do video. Yeah, it's like, oh, it's free, I'll use it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting back onto Riverside for sure.
I don't doubt you, because the pain, as a solo team podcaster, I fully understand that.
Yeah.
Wow. Where do you want your podcast to go from here? Like, you've already went from the Bearded Biz to the Erik Allen Show. Obviously, I'm guessing you're going to stay with the Erik Allen Show as you build your brand.
Yeah.
But where do you want to go as a podcaster? Where do you see yourself going?
Man, I think for me, the ultimate goal is to get to the top 0.5% globally, right? Like, I want to continue to grow this show. The video version of my podcast on YouTube is actually starting to grow quite a bit. I probably get 40, anywhere from 35 to 50 new subscribers a month. So it's starting to grow on that. So I'd love to get to a point where the YouTube version of my podcast is, generating income from it. Or I think we're getting there close, sometime in next year, probably. But really looking forward to that. But I think overall, I want to have this podcast impacting people, because I think that everybody should start a podcast. Should start a podcast. And I say that because I didn't share my story till I was 39 years old. I went through life having this childhood trauma and all this stuff that I went through, and I didn't have the confidence to share my story until I heard Ed Mylett on Instagram in 2018 say, "Hey, submit a video. Tell me why you're passionate about doing something, and then I'll pick a winner." And I would never shared my story before, but I heard him say that, and I said, "Man, I really want to talk to Ed Mylett. I really want to see what he's got." And I braved it up and like got in front of the camera and shared my story. And it was just me, but I was nervous as heck, man, sweating like crazy. And I submitted it on Instagram, and like he was posting all these things like, "Here's a top runner, here's a top runner." And then I woke up one morning to a text or a message on Instagram that said, "Here's our winner." And I won the message, my video, because I shared it with Ed, and which landed me a phone call with Ed, which kicked this whole podcast off. But so crazy. Like, I think my show, I want to get to the point where I'm impacting so many people that we make it to the top 0.5% of all podcasts, and that I am putting through so many people through my free course, my free stuff that's on the website, to putting into my course, because I truly believe everybody should share their story, whether they're going to share that out to a podcast or just record yourself and save it with your family. Like, I want to inspire people to share their story, and I want to inspire especially men, because I think we tend to hold that back and not ask for help, but to step out of our comfort zone and start sharing our story, and not worrying about our past and other people's opinions of us, because that does not define our future. We do. We get to step into that and make that happen, man.
I love that. I love that goal, because it's similar to me. I have a goal of 100 million podcasts launched before I die. Because I agree with you. It is the number one way to learn. Because I learned how to be an entrepreneur. I learned that entrepreneurs don't know anything. When they start, because they don't know what they don't know, but they figure it out themselves. It's a great way to for businesses to connect with not only their audience or their customers, but also to network. Like you can network and you can find a new job. I have people who have been able to be hired from their podcast just from having someone on their podcast, which is insane. What do you do to invest in yourself? Like, obviously the name of the podcast, our podcast here, is Invest in Yourself, the digital entrepreneur. You're a digital entrepreneur. What do you do to invest in yourself to become the best version of yourself?
I have a pretty strict morning routine. So for me, immediately when I wake up, I go into a grateful mode, man. And for me personally, I'm like, man, thank you, Jesus, for another day to see and hug and hold my family. But then when I get upstairs, I start reading the Bible. That's kind of my quiet time. But then I'm also like reading a Maxwell Daily Reader book every day. I try to read as much as I can. I've got hundreds of books, and I try to read for 30 minutes a day and really soak that in. And outside of the books, I'm always trying to invest in some other, I don't want to say I'm a course junkie, but I like to go and listen to podcasts. I also like to, if there's somebody that I trust, and I might have a friend that went through a course that was like, man, that really helped me out a ton. I want to do that. And so I also didn't want to just call myself a coach, because I want to be a coach, and I'm a coach. No, I actually wanted to go through training. So I invested in John Maxwell's actual coaching program a couple years back, and it's helped me a ton, man. So, going through and learning how to be a better speaker, how to be a better coach, what questions should I be asking? And I also invested in a local thing called Toastmasters, which a lot of people probably know of, but I go to Toastmasters, helps me be a better public speaker, get right on the spot, feedback. And so I think I can always be improving. One of the things that Ed Mylett told me was the acronym CANI, CANI, constant and never ending improvement. And I always want to be doing that.
I love that. I love that self-education, because I don't look at it as a course junkie, because I love courses as well. I look at it as self-education.
Totally.
This is the university of life, if you will, right?
Totally.
And we have to pay. We have to get those courses so that we can improve ourselves, maybe in sales and like you do in public speaking. You're always self-improving, which is the most important thing, because that's the only way we'll reach the highest level of ourselves.
Totally.
What's the one advice you would give to someone starting a business, I don't want to start a podcast, I want to say start a business, because that is what this is, becoming a digital entrepreneur, starting a business, what's your one suggestion, one piece of advice to those people?
Surround yourself with people that are doing the thing that you want to do. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but I say get out of your comfort zone. Go find people locally in a meetup or a business meetup or entrepreneur or business meetup, whatever that is. But the more people that you can surround yourself with that are doing the things that you want to do, like not only doing the things you want to do, but doing the things that you want to do, how you want to do it. Right. So if there's somebody that's a millionaire, but they don't align with your values, that's probably not someone you want to line up with. But if there's somebody that you align with value wise and they're doing what you want to do, they're a full-time entrepreneur, maybe you're a faith-based person and they're a Christian or a faith-based entrepreneur, go surround yourself with them. Like, so surround yourself with people that have like values as you, and then get in front of them as often as you can. Take them out to coffee, go to meetups, get into their programs, find somebody that you can trust and get in their community. Like Ed Milet has said, like if you're walking around at 80 degrees, go find guys that are walking around 120, because just being in their presence is going to motivate you to step up and start to be more on their level, right? And so surround yourself with the people that are living the life that you want to live.
I love that. It's a great piece of advice for anybody, whatever, if it's an entrepreneur, a podcaster, or even a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you've learned from podcasting that you would love to share with the audience?
I think the one thing I've learned from podcasting is just don't quit. Like the way that you get successful in podcasting is you just don't quit, because everybody else will. So like if you just keep going and just like, don't look at the numbers. Like I think too many people will start podcasts and go, man, I want to be the next Joe Rogan, have 100 million downloads, and I want to make $100 million. And they get hung up on the numbers. They get hung up on the number of downloads. Man, I only had 20 downloads this week, or I only had 100 downloads this week. I tell my students when they come through, don't look at the numbers. If you're going to do podcasting, don't worry about the numbers. Do it because you love it. Do it because you're passionate about it. Do it because you want to connect with people. Because even if there's one person that listens to your show, maybe it's your mom, I don't care. But if there's one person listening to your show and they're being impacted by what you're sharing with them, you've already won. You don't have to worry about the Joe Rogan 100 million downloads or whatever. But too many people get hung up like, man, I'm going to quit my podcast because I only got 50 downloads on this podcast, or I only got 20 downloads. Don't look at the numbers. Do podcasting because you love it, man, and that'll keep you going.
I love it. We are coming up to the end of the episode. I know you're tight for time, Erik, so I'm going to hit you with the last question here. What advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
Man, my 10-year-old self was was about ready to get into the next 10 years of chaos. So I would tell my 10-year-old self that it's going to be okay.
I love it.
I went through a crazy childhood and had to fight my mom's boyfriend when I was 13, and I was in jail at 18 and bankrupt and battled addictions and things like that for over the next 10 years between 13 and 23. So I was about ready to step into a chaos at that time of my life. But if I could go back and tell my 10-year-old self, hey, everything's going to work out. Everything will be okay. Keep going. Just don't quit. And, a lot of the guys actually two of the guys that I ended up, doing a lot of drugs with when I was in high school and hanging out, they've passed. There was a group of 5 of us. 2 of them are gone. Right. And so I look at it, I'm like, man, just don't quit. You just got to keep busting through that stuff. And so, yeah, that'd be my advice at 10 years old, man. Just don't quit. Everything will be all right.
I love it. I'm going to jump off stage here, Erik. Let everybody know where they can find you, follow you, and all that good stuff. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's awesome, dude.
I'm off stage here, just sitting here waiting, and you're just looking at me. Yeah, no, this is your time. Let my audience know.
I totally misunderstood that. I'm so sorry. That's my fault.
By the way, this is staying in because this is podcasting 101.
For sure, dude. I love it. We're just being real here. Man, you can check me out at erikallenmedia.com. That's ERIKALLEN media.com. That's my website. I've got a ton of free resources on there, books that I recommend, courses that I recommend. You can email me, join my newsletter. I send out some of the hidden stuff in my newsletter. I'm probably most active on Instagram. So it's Erik G. Allen, ERIK. And then my YouTube channel is erikallenmedia.com. Would love a subscribe for me on there. I respond to every comment and every DM. So if you have questions, shoot them over and I'll get them to you. Thank you so much.
I love it. Erik, I thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to re-listening to this episode and getting all those golden nuggets you dropped that I may have missed. So thank you so much. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes below to connect with Erik and, subscribe to his show, leave that 5-star review. I thank you so much for listening.